Yo, what's up guys, I'm Dunmere, I'm a rank 1 peak SUPERVIVE player, and I'm going to give you guys a rundown for the Steam Next Fest test patch notes. So in these patch notes that are very long, they didn't really make good notice of what's really important to understand, and there's some big changes that got like just a couple lines of information on them. So I'm going to run through these and explain to you guys my read on them and what I think is really important to know. Alright, so starting off, this is a very big one. They did give a lot of information on this one, but essentially, in the last set of playtests, they mess around with time to kill a lot. Now, it's important to know that in these set of patch notes, sometimes they'll mention the most recent, like, mid-September veteran playtest they did that were like 1 or 2 days, and sometimes they didn't. But they, all these patch notes are essentially collated from the last major September playtest. So if you've been playing the ones most recently, some of these changes would sound like they were doubled up, but they're not. So just use that as your frame of reference. So, however, they made some pretty large changes to the way that the time to kill was in the game, just with messing with adding the new evolving items and then adding and changing the way the armor worked to an extent. So the biggest thing here is that they have made it so armor is now reduced back to what it was. They buffed it. They buffed the baseline damage reduction, and then they, like in last playtest, and they made it so when you're unarmored, you were taking less damage. So being unarmored, so when your armor's broken, wasn't quite as bad. So they've reverted that. So just expect to die faster and expect things to also die faster, and be careful about keeping up your armor. So another kind of important change here is they talk about the audio attenuation for enemy attacks. So that has been increased. So now you should be expecting people to be able to hear you more when you're fighting, and to be able to hear enemies nearby when you're fighting more too. So keep that in mind and watch out for getting third-partied when you're attacking. Yeah. So they also made some minor changes to some other things. Power shards give you +2 AP, so if you have them in your inventory, you get extra damage, but it's like not that substantial, so this isn't really something to worry about. And this one right here is pretty big though. So the cremation effect that was given through a certain power or certain abilities like Shrike's Bird Bomb, that time frame used to, like, the revive progress that you had on it, if you stepped off momentarily, used to like instantly go down, and now it's a lot less. So you don't have to commit to reviving a cremated ally quite as much. So if you were on it and you're rezzing someone and they like toss a cooldown onto you, like feel free to dash off, walk back on. You should be able to, like, it won't decay nearly as fast because it was reduced by 50%. So yeah. All right, and then they made it so gold keys can now open vaults. This is something that's just useful, so gold keys are much better to just have in general. They are also now available to be used for like early strats of like dropping where you think a gold key is going to spawn, instantly searching for it, hitting the vault before the enemy gets a chance, and then giving yourself an advantage in a fight for anyone that's dropped near you. Yep. And then they've added hunter mastery missions. It's all going to be reset before open beta. That's coming up before the end of the year. So don't go crazy on it if you are only about that and you're not just there for the experience, right? So yeah, all right. Then they mess around with visual updates. This is actually pretty important though, because as much as, like, you know, this stuff just, oh wow, they changed it, like that's easy to understand. They did this change here. So this has to do with how gliding functions. What they did before, because the game has like this 2.5 dimensional perspective, when enemies were below like your baseline 0 of the ground, if they were above or below that, they would appear where they weren't actually, just because of the way that they're like technically traveling on the screen. So if you were shooting at them, you wouldn't hit them with the way that was functioning, and instead there was like this thing called a soul anchor that if they were gliding or something, you could easily see and shoot it and spike them, because that's where they're technically, like their hitbox technically was. But they went and changed it that you could do that, or you could just hit them on their body. So they had a 2 times hitbox size for their, like, when they were above or below, or I mean like when they were gliding in particular. So it was like impossible to dodge anyone when you were gliding, and if you were gliding, like you were just going to get spiked. That has been reverted though, so that's really good. And it's important to know that you have more flexibility when like going below the 0 level and just like flying around a little bit to try and dodge some people. Yep. And then the rest are just a bunch of visual changes, which are cool, but you know, nothing crazy important. We got voiceovers now. Great. This isn't anything too crazy, but during the Steam Next Fest test, if you watch Twitch, you can get Twitch drops for these 2 emotes. One of them is Bishop with like fire around her, and then the other one is Kingpin, like doing this. But yeah, you can get those. And then the currency for this playtest is reset, but it will get reset again for the open beta. So whatever money you have this playtest, just feel free to spend it just for fun. Yeah. All right. Map. These are some important changes here. The visuals, cool, but whatever. But they messed with the plane drops. The plane drops now have a bunch of different ways that they can work. Right before, it was always just a plane like going across the map in some direction. That's still there, but instead there's multiple different types of ones that they can do. Some of them open up. The plane drops like opens up like a cone, and you can continue. You can drop further out the longer you're on. Some of them do the opposite of that, and they get tighter. There's some versions where a circle just appears on the map, and then you have 10 seconds to pick where you want to drop, and then everyone drops at the same time. Sometimes it's like that, but it's an expanding zone, and then you can drop as it expands. Some of them drop with like 4 circles appear around the map, and you can drop wherever. And there's a lot of different versions that they've added, so it's a different wrinkle to think about when you're dropping. Yeah, so this one's pretty big too. Instead of the hot zones, the gold armor spawn zones spawning on the outside, they can now spawn everywhere, including the train. So that's something to watch out for. And they've also made it so the chance of gold armor spawning in a single biome is now up from 10% to 25%, which is pretty substantial, because when all the armors are spawning in one area like that, especially if it's like towards like the right side of the map, towards the stacks where you can get the armors and then go get over leveled, it's something you might want to just go ahead and try and contest, or else you're going to have like this super powerful team just in the map running around and killing you. Not a big fan of this change, but you know, whatever. So the Academy, for those of you who didn't really know, there were these books you could pick up. You could walk over them and open them like a chest, and you could pick them up. And people were getting like insane XP levels really early into the game. Like, you know, yeah, you could get people sometimes to like level 8. And everyone on your team to level 5 minimum. So you all had your ultimates, and you could just steamroll straight left into the map and go hit like 3 vaults and then contest the early objectives, and just basically you had a really strong advantage in the game. They've nerfed that a little bit. I don't think they haven't nerfed it so much that it's like useless, because everyone on your team can still get level 5 before everybody else in the game can, without killing anybody. But that is something to keep in mind, that it did get nerfed a little bit. So, this is also something to notice. Vaults aren't quite as powerful as they used to be. They don't drop rare powers as consistently. And they now drop uncommon powers more reliably. So they're still good, of course, but they're not as good. Right. All right. So jumping right into the section here with how equipment works. If you didn't play... Oops. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're going to keep that in the video because I don't want to edit it out, to be honest. Right. Equipment updates. So right here, if you didn't play the most recent playtest, one of the ones in the middle of the month, you know, not the biggest one, they changed the way that equipment works. Instead of having items just drop and then you pick them up and that's how you pick your build, the items now are a build that you pick before the game. And there's 3 versions. You can pick a whole damage build, so 2 damage items. You can pick a damage and a tank item, or you can take tank. And these items don't have like, they don't have extra buffs on them. They don't have like the mana or movement speed or vamp or whatever. And then you have to upgrade them. So when you kill mobs, they drop scraps. As of last playtest, it was 6 to upgrade them to the first level, and then 4 the second time. Or maybe it was 6 and 6. I don't quote me on that one. But the point is, you have to frag out on the mobs, get these scraps, and then when you upgraded it twice, they would allow you to choose. For the first time, it would allow you to it would transform it into the item with you know, like which item you want. So if you wanted your damage item to turn into a tech blade, it would turn into a tech blade. And then I missaid it, but you have to upgrade it twice after that. First, you know, from white to green and then green to blue, and then your item would evolve into one of these special ones like Bubble Blade, Mind Blade, Rampage. Right. But that's something you pick before before the game starts. And yeah, you couldn't find items otherwise on the map. Right. So I'm going to run through the equipment changes here now. I think they're very important too. So essentially, in the last few little play tests, like stat stick items were just insane. Like you could be pulling like upwards of like 30 to 40% extra AP. So just your damage was getting increased by like 20 to 30% or more, depending on the character, just by picking the stat stick items. So yeah, they are trying to nerf those, which is good overall. Yep. And they also made it so all the helm items give less HP slightly, nothing too crazy, but just enough to try and reduce down some of the time to kill, or lower the time to kill that had gotten kind of wild in that one playtest in September. So, all right, going right into it. Bladed helm, 5% less HP. Yeah. So this is a new one, a new item here, persistence. I've been hearing a lot of people talking about this could be quite powerful. It does depend on how it actually functions. In combat, you build up to 3 stacks, which seemingly was you get it by being in combat for a certain amount of time, which I believe is 3 seconds. And then after that, your next LMB against an enemy hunter will heal you for 3% of your max HP and then grant some permanent max health. Depending on how much that max health really is, it could be kind of crazy. If it's nothing, like if the numbers are like moderately low, like you're getting like 8 HP or something like that, then it's not really that good. But this could be something to look for. And it really also depends on how the stacks work and how much of a cooldown there is. Like if there's like a 10-second cooldown, then you're only going to be proccing this like 2 or 3 times in a whole fight, which is just not good enough in my opinion. But Gigantism, stat stick item, got nerfed from 7.5% max HP to AP. Nerfed from 7.5% to 5%. This is substantial, but Gigantism is still probably best in slot, depending if persistence is good or not. But this is really strong on characters like Kingpin and other characters that want to be tanky. I will almost certainly be running this in the playtest. All right, so Bubble Blade got a bug fix, nothing crazy there. Mind Blade has, like, this is probably the biggest nerf in all of the items that they added. Mind Blade's max mana to AP conversion percentage was reloaded from 33% to 10%, which is huge. And now it only works on hunters. So before you were getting insane value from it, and it was stacking against mobs. So you could just go farm it up off mobs. And then if you were running like a mana, like another mana item, you were getting just insane, like, or greed, the one that you get bonus stats from, you were just getting like insane damage. It was silly. Yeah. Rampage also got pretty heftily nerfed. This one was giving you essentially you could charge it up to like 10 times. You could proc it 10 times, and then it would give you that much extra HP or AP for a short time. But basically, if you're playing a character like Firefox or Freeze or something like that, you could proc it up really quickly and get yourself like a bonus 100 AP, where like the standard is like 300-ish, right? And so you're pulling like an extra 33% damage. Now it has the same max potential, but instead of getting 10 each time, you're getting 5. And then when you hit the max stacks, which I believe is 10, unless I'm, tripping, it multiplies and gives you the full 100. But you don't get nearly as much value. So if you're not getting that to the max, you're not getting anywhere near as much value, and just in general, you're losing value over time while you're charging it up. And then they also made it so the time you have to get these stacks is a lot lower. So from 5 seconds to 3 seconds. So you have to be way better with it, and you get less value to start with. So probably not that good anymore. All right, Mana Helm also got 5% less HP. Ambush got a pretty big nerf. So before you were getting an extra armor shred of 200%, so you were at 300%. Now you're getting 50%, so you're at 150% base. And then the armor shred in Bush was lowered from 400% to 200%. So before, if you had hit someone from the bush, you were like insta shredding all their armor. Now it's going to be at 300%. So still strong. And Ambush now spawns bush again, or brush again, but it's just not as nearly as good, like objectively, just because you can't always be fighting in brush, even if you spawn it on yourself, you know. So yeah, still probably quite good if you like set up the bush where you want to fight or where you expect to fight, but not anywhere near as good as it was before. So yeah, Glacial Comet nerf 2, probably, you know, pretty garbage. And then Scholar is a new item that was getting like a lot of bonus. The biggest reason I would have argued to use it before is that you were getting an additional 50 mana, which could have been really useful with the Mind Blade, but Mind Blade is severely nerfed, so that's not very valuable. And the amount of HP you're getting is probably not that much. I believe the calculation works like you'll see on the characters later. It's like, oh, Firefox's toughness was dropped from 5 to 4.5. I believe this calculation is just 2 times 4.5 in that situation, so it'd be 9. So you're getting 10 times 9, 90 stacks, or 90 HP total off of that, unless I'm miscalculating that. But even so, it shouldn't be any more than like 180 total on a character like Oathbreaker. So I just don't think it's that good, probably. Quick Blade, you go around, new thing, you go around killing bosses. When you get 5 mini bosses or bosses, you get the Zenith Blade, which gets you AP based on 25% of your bonus movement speed. This just doesn't seem very good to me. I don't think the like bonus movement speed you have is enough to like really be a lot of AP, and it's just too hard to reliably kill that many major creeps. So Interweaver got a huge nerf, big damage nerf on how much damage it was doing, and then no longer reducing ability cooldowns by 0.5 seconds per missile that it sent out, because you would proc it and then it would send a little missile out that would deal damage and reduce the cooldown by half a second. But it doesn't do that anymore, and that's why people were using it, so don't use that one. The Tech Blade, however, is still very strong, and there's 2 other really potentially strong options here. The first one is Power User. You get a little bit of a extra power haste for opening vaults, which is cool. Not that great, whatever. But this part, after 2 stacks, so you do 2 vaults, it transforms into Power Master. The issue that gives your powers the soulbound capability, which means when you die, you keep them. That's cool and useful, and can give you the ability to recover from like getting crapped on by an enemy team. But the issue is, by the time you upgrade your items, there likely isn't going to be 2 vaults alive on the map, or ones that you can reach. So it's just like, realistically, I just don't really see it happening all that often. So I would definitely recommend going for Amplifier. Amplifier makes it so you get an extra 5% cooldown reduction, which is just good in general. That's going to take like the percentage from like, what is it, like 14% or 15, 16 to like 21 type thing. But what it does is every time you cast an ability, you get an extra 5% damage reduction or cooldown reduction. So if you spam your dash, for example, 6 times, you would have an extra 30% cooldown reduction. And this effect stays until you cast a different ability. So in really late game fights where you're sitting there spamming like Ghost Laser, that thing's going to get on a really low cooldown pretty darn quickly. That's really, really valuable. Just on top of this already being a good ability, right? Or good item. Certain characters like Kingpin potentially could drop their hook cooldown down to half timing, which is also extremely valuable. And you're going to have to reset it at some point, of course. But even then, you have a Tech Blade, which is still good. And then you have a even stronger version of Tech Blade. So this is probably like best in slot on any character that wants to run a Tech Blade. Which is a lot of characters. Tech Helmet got nerfed also. Bug fix on Soulbound. Vive Infuser got nerfed. Instead of getting a insta burst of 100% of the HP, which wasn't crazy high in the first place, I don't think. Now it's 50% burst and 50% heal over time. So that is removed on damage. So if you take any damage during this, you lose that, right? So you only get half. And then the cooldown on it is now 5 seconds. I believe it was 3 seconds before. So that's, I don't know. I think people have been talking about this being good potentially still, but I think this seems rough to me. And then we got some interesting changes, some new items, or a new one for Vamp Blade, Vamp Blade now has an option to give you Soul Drain. Stomping or executing Wisps gives you 200 HP per second. That can be pretty useful on some characters, but realistically, the characters that want to be stomping on Wisps aren't really running Vamp. Like maybe Firefox, sorry, Felix. But yeah, anyway. Swift Blade got a big nerf. Don't use that one anymore probably, or don't expect that to be useful for that. And Overdrive got a pretty solid buff. Instead of and now you have a 3% Omnivamp, and then the overheals generate a shield equal to 100% of the overheal. But this actually, if I'm remembering correctly, this might be a slight. Never mind. Sorry, I was going off on something. But yeah, so this got buffed. 100% of the overheal from Omnivamp damage you're dealing is directly translated into a shield, which is pretty useful. Definitely the best Vamp Blade item. They added some powers. They didn't really explain a lot of it, so I'll run through and give you guys some information. They added some, they readjusted some, buffed some. There's a couple important things. So there's 2 new powers, Icarus Glide and Wisp Vacuum. I don't know what Icarus Glide does, but Wisp Vacuum will let you suck up wisps that are on the map, so you can just literally pull them in like ally and enemy, I believe. That could be potentially quite good. Endless Reaper is a power that I believe resets your, or it's not a power, it's like an item that allows you to reset all your cooldowns when you get a knock, I believe. All your cooldowns that aren't ultimate. I believe that's what it does. Don't quote me on that. And then there's Glide Boots, which is another one. This should probably just maybe give you, I'm not sure exactly what it's doing, but it's definitely giving you some sort of increase to like your glider stamina, and or like making you have like infinite potentially. I'm not sure though. Don't quote me on that one either, because I haven't seen what it does yet. All right, rare powers. They now, like, multi-tool was an item, is now a power, and you can use it, just pick up bonfires instantly. That's really useful, and it should be for free. Hover wings, your mass is increased now. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work. Maybe it makes you go slower too. Maybe it just means you're able to kind of just push into where you want to more reliably. This is probably a buff. Sandwall getting buffed is big. Sandwall was really good before. You could reliably get it in the in Cold Fang Keep, and now it's getting buffed. So I would look to pick these up more. All right, so uncommon powers, Bloodstone got nerfed down into 1. Good, because it's pretty garbage. Clone works a little bit differently. Nothing crazy here. One of the big ones is that Raven Spy is back in the game. This is essentially a tree drone. Before you just pop it on a tree and it would give you like a bonfire size vision just entirely around you, like true vision. That's really good. This is something to potentially look out for also. Scuba gear now works on the spicy water, so the ice water in certain areas that will damage you. This is now working on that, so that could be kind of a niche option for you to opt into if you see it and you know the circle's going towards that area, but that could be quite good. So done with all the powers, we're moving on to the hunter changes. Again, it's important to know that the hunter changes are specifically, unless mentioned otherwise, from the previous, like the big playtest, right? So if you played the recent ones and you see like, you know, your character got changed, and then you're looking at this and you see a similar change, it's that change. It's just being noted now. There's also like a change or two that was not noted in this that I've heard about, and I'll mention those too. All right, so they are, for Bishop, that got like Giga buffed, they're trying to nerf Bishop's tank capabilities, or in tank version a bit. So her toughness has been lowered from 5 to 4.5. This is how much of like a value you get from the HP items. So she's just getting less HP overall now by using tank items. And then they made it so the primary fire damage, her little displacement charge, her punch, and her ultimate all have had their damage changed from being 50%, from 66% base damage to 33% gain from AP. Now it's like 50-50. So she's getting like something like a 25% damage nerf probably on on her, like from going from a previous tank build to like what she is now. So if you're one tank, it doesn't mean it's like inviable, it's just she doesn't deal as much damage for sure. Meaning you would probably want to push her into the damage role or damage based build primarily, depending on how like how kill thresholds work and stuff like that. Right. However, she did get buffed too. Her displacement charge is now like a really good level 3 upgrade option where it resets your punch. So if you hit it, so if you like are by someone, you ult into them, you can toss it at their feet, punch it and them into a wall, stun them, walk up, and then punch them again to stun them again. And just like perma CC them and murder them. It's going to be potentially kind of just unfun to play against, but we'll see. Brawl got a little bit reworked. His last patch, he was doing like a lot of damage with his primary fire. And the Brawl players didn't really like that. So they changed that to reducing his damage by 5% and reducing his power state damage by 5%. And putting that into his adaptive strike, his R&B damage by 10% to try and just be like an equal trade. But they want him to be more like cooldown based and like combo based as opposed to just jumping in and just slapping you to death. So yeah, this one is also a pretty useful thing. I saw one of the Brawl players talking about how this, when you dash, you leave a clone behind. If the clone is hit, you gain a stack of your blazing passive. And from what I saw, like using this 3 times, so getting all the clones hit, which should be pretty easy if you're just dashing. That plus like a couple hits is enough to fully empower you, which is a big damage buff for Brawl. So this might be a very solid option now. And then, oops, I messed it up again. And then this one for the and so then this one for the tether speed, the baseline speed is a lot slower, but the absolute highest is higher. This is a nerf overall from what I've heard. In general, you used to kind of just like yeet yourself at people and like swing rapidly, but now you kind of don't as much. So yeah, you have to play with that just and see how it feels, but keep in mind that that is something that happened. All right, so Aluna is getting a toughness nerf, so her tank builds aren't going to be quite as viable. And I think that's kind of what people were leaning towards her on the character, just to make her tanky enough to like walk in, pick up an ally, use the extra HP shield that she was getting from that, and then like go res them. But in exchange, she's had her base damage on her base damage and the damage she was stacking with her primary fire, and then increased by 10%, and then the amount of stacks she can apply, and then the movement speed of the like when she's firing them reduced. So she's better at fragging, worse being tanky. Nothing crazy about this though. Firefox had his toughness reduced a little bit, and now you can upgrade whatever cooldown he upgrades to level 3, gets a 20% reduction in cooldown whenever he applies or upgrades ignite. So this is really useful primarily on this heat shield, which is why they ended up increasing why they nerfed it to have the cooldowns a little bit longer for that one, because you can do something like walk in the enemy team, ult through them, spin to catch them, and then if it hits like 2 or 3 people with your primary fire, or you're burning them a little bit, and then you catch one with ignite, and then you throw your R&B at them, you're getting like at least 3 full ignites applied to people or upgrades, and that's giving you 60% damage or 60% CDR reduction, which is dropping that from 10 to 4 seconds. And you were already, using that for like that process took about 2 seconds, leaving this cooldown available again in 2 seconds, which is like really powerful. So it's more useful to pop your heat shield early instead of like looking for a really good opportunity, knowing that you can get it back quickly if you do it well enough. All right, so Ghost got some buffs. I think he's still just very strong overall. The spike grenade days duration has been increased. It's on directly stuck enemies. So before there was like no incentive to hit people with it directly because it actually was a lower days time. They buffed that. The slow has been increased on days, so his grenade's just powerful in general, and it respects line of sight now. Don't know exactly what that means in terms of gameplay, but yeah. The combat slide, however, did get nerfed, and the minimum cooldown you can have on the like, tap dash is 4 seconds, because people were tapping it, jumping, releasing, and they would get like a full momentum jump. You can still do that, but it's on a 4-second cooldown instead of like 1.5. But it's, again, it's at such a low cooldown in general that, like, you know, what are we talking about here? All right, like, this is still fine. And then the damage from his railgun and the ability to turn it got buffed. And this is useful because this knocks people back and like knocks you in the direction you shoot a little bit. So you can use this as an extra escape, right? Like when someone's chasing you, you jump, shoot it, it knocks you back and it'll hit them and boop them. You have a little bit more flexibility to aim. And then this is a really good change that I'm really happy about. They modified the colors so you can actually kind of see whose napalm is whose, because you just couldn't see it before. All right, Hudson is the new name for Gunner. This character is hot garbage. Sorry to say it. Despite the rework, basically before he was getting, you know, he had this overclock ability that would allow his gun to become a lot more powerful and for him to spam it but not be able to turn while he was doing it as much or move as fast. That's just like in his kit now. So the longer he shoots, the faster, the more damage he does, but the less he can turn and the slower he can move. So yeah, that's how it works. And now he has this passive of getting 1% of his armor per second when out of combat. That's useful. You can kind of trade your armor to your teammates to like restore theirs while yours is full. Yep. And then this is a good buff for it. The hover jets now have 2 charges, which is useful. And you can knock people a little bit when you dash into people. And then an extra little bonus, when you kill people with the ultimate, you get a 25% health and 25% armor like pack from it. But bottom line is he's still not good at all. I wouldn't really bother touching him, to be honest. Yeah, so Jin is the new name for Stalker. He got some changes to a nerf, primarily that his primary fire no longer applies a mark on enemies that was like increasing damage. That could be potentially substantial. I don't play a bunch of this character, so it's hard for me to kind of tell. But yeah, you'd have to kind of check with the Stalker folks on that one. And then the armor shred was reduced by 1, and there's a 0.1 second wind down to attacks. These, like, if they're mentioning this bonus armor shred by 1, that should be pretty substantial. Nothing maybe crazy, but this is like, I don't know, the numbers they use are kind of weird sometimes because they you know, in other parts of the patch notes, the armor shred was talked in percentages. So why are we at 1? Is that like 100%? Like maybe he was getting bonus 300%. Now it's 200%. I don't know. They, you know, hard to tell. But the flash dagger R&B, this is important. The visuals are updated. So this is what lets him like TP behind you when he hits you with it. And so it's important to like try and learn that, so that if he throws it at you, you can make sure you're avoiding it, because that's the thing that's going to get you killed. And now he can use his clone to aim at the cursor to get better at following his orders, which is really useful. So if you're playing the character, this is going to be more dangerous or more effective. And if you're playing against it, be careful of the clone being more effective. Jewel got some minor changes, but they're pretty important. Her lightning strike has a lot more bright visual on it, or, you know, they call it loud, so you can see it a lot better. That's a nerf because this thing was really hard to see sometimes. But the voltaic spear has explosive damage on it. So depending on how much that explosive damage is, that could give her an answer to Oathbreaker's shield being so oppressive to her, because it would take extra damage. So if you're playing against an Oathbreaker, like, make sure you wait until you predict when he's going to use his empowered shield and hit him with this or hit his shield with it when he's not ready. Right. So Kingpin got an interesting little change. Nothing crazy. Still wouldn't know if I'd recommend even using this, depending on how like breakpoints work with it too. But you can get up to 75% bonus damage based on Kingpin's distance from the ground when you cast his slam. So it's literally just, you know, like try to be like a physics, like you're coming in, slamming, extra damage. Yeah. But they say that jumping into a dash into the slam will give you 30% bonus damage. So that's cool, useful. It's kind of just consistent extra 30% damage with this at least. So yeah, maybe, you know, maybe have some fun with it, try it, but I don't think it's anything like groundbreaking. Yes. All right, so Myth got hit pretty hard. Myth's base HP was lowered from 950 to 850, and her health was lowered from 57 to 51. This itself is nothing crazy. It hurts, but she's a ranged character anyway with knockbacks, so she should be able to, you know, survive. They changed the way her bow works a little bit. Instead of having like this pause in between the green and the blue shots, it's linear, so it's like smooth. Though I think people are saying this doesn't feel that good. However, this is where things get really painful. The knockback used to be you just kind of tapped it and it would travel out and then it would knock people really far. But now you have to charge it up, and it works like how you think it would work. And so if you don't get a good prediction on when people are engaging on you, you're not going to get good value with it, because now there's a longer minimum charge time before firing, and you can't hold it infinitely, only 1.9 seconds. And then you have to charge it up to get a lot of value out of it. So if you're standing there like having someone walk up on you and you tap it into them, it's oftentimes not going to be enough to knock them back and kill them like it used to be, or hit them into a wall. But they made it so at level 3 you can, wow, okay, I'm just going here, but they made it at level 3 you can get a extra like dash charge whenever you wall stun someone with it, but that's nothing crazy and probably not what you should be going anyway. Yep, this one's also interesting. The width of her arrows, her rain of arrows, is wider up close, but decreased at long range. This gives her a bit more flexibility in close fights from, like, you know, dropping these on her feet to stop people from pushing into her. So it might be a little bit of a counter nerf to, or, you know, a counter buff to this Heart Piercer thing. But the inability to pressure as much of a distance at long range is pretty bad too. So again, I think this is a nerf overall too. So Myth ain't feeling that great right now. Oath had his toughness lowered from 7 to 6, so that's a moderate nerf. But now his hammer works differently. It charges twice as fast, but the damage ratios have been adjusted from 50% base damage to 50% ratios, which is kind of weird. I don't know. I wonder if this isn't like communicated properly, because right here it says that Oath has a big presence, especially at high skill levels. With these changes, we're trying to nudge him closer to a tank melee playstyle, while giving him some interesting options for level 3 ability upgrades. I don't really see how making the base damage of his hammer swing more into, like, now you get less base damage for being tanky, 50% down to 33%. So unless you're picking damage items, you're getting a lower portion of your damage from that. And so that's kind of weird to me. I guess maybe they're saying, like, if someone's going tanky HP, they need, like, they're not going to deal as much damage. So I don't know. It doesn't, like, the wording's weird. But basically, a tank build isn't going to be quite as good as it was. But now he charges his hammer a lot faster. So maybe fragging with a high damage build and just jumping on people and charging it up and slapping them could be, like, kind of insane potentially, especially with this change. The level 3 upgrade for your dash now makes you get a reset on the shield bash whenever you hit someone with your spin dash. So this gives you a combo of seeing an enemy, dashing onto them, shield bashing yourself. If you can hit them, great. If not, you're still tanking, you know, you're blocking damage, and then you're tanking more damage on your shield that gets a cooldown restore on your dash, that then allows you to dash onto that target, then shield bash them again because you got the reset with this level 3 thing. So basically you would just be like dash shield, and you could just hyper aggro onto people. I don't know. This is kind of interesting because this seems to be taking him further from a tank playstyle to more of like a kind of like assassin-ish thing that he kind of is sometimes, but I don't know. Anyway, Shiv got a lot of weird number changes. The numbers themselves don't really matter. Essentially, you now have one extra Master Assassin stack. Or the stack durations are longer. That's cool. This is what increases her damage over time when she hits someone with her primary fire or her in charged up primary fire. Bottom line though, her her primary fires do less damage on the first 0, 1, and 2 shots, or 2 stacks of Master Assassin, and they will do more damage at 3+ stacks. So yeah, that's like basically what you're doing. You're doing less damage to start, you're doing more damage at the end. This is pretty big. The chain bolas now applies 2 stacks of Master Assassin, so that's good. But the level 3 version no longer provides a bonus half-second stun duration at level 3. That was pretty big. Being able to stun people for an extra half second is like the difference between them being able to survive with like, you know, a quarter of their HP or being dead type thing. So that's a big nerf. But she's still a very powerful character. Her quick flip got reduced in cooldown a little bit, even though level 3 is still 5 seconds. The speed buff after using it has been increased by about 60%, so that's nice. But you now actually get that taken away when you take damage, so this is all still kind of neutral. However, this is nasty. Now at level, even without being level 3, you apply a 50% slow to enemies when you hit them with it. So using this properly, this is like an engage tool. Like you can like, it's a little bit risky because, you know, she has to commit onto it, but you can just throw it at people when you're chasing them to catch them with it, and slow them, and they're guaranteed dead basically. Or you could potentially even like fish with it, right? Like if your team has some good engagers, you could sit there and you could just kind of poke with it and try and land it on someone to trigger an engage that you then go slightly later on afterwards. And then now level 3 of this applies to stacks of Master Assassin also. The ult got modified a little bit, but I believe I was reading somewhere that the ult numbers aren't correct, and I think they actually did get buffed, I believe. Right, so anyway, Shrike got a kick in her metaphorical nuts here. She can shoot her primary fire continuously, hold LMB, so that's cool quality of life thing. Doesn't really change anything though. This is good. Her shift knocks always reset disengage, so she kills someone, she gets her shift dash back. And then the level 3 version applies a mark to someone, the one that she, you know, her passive mark that lets her do extra damage when she shoots somebody. But this is kind of not that great, because if someone's on top of you anyway, like, you're kind of struggling. In the game like a year ago, this would have been kind of insane, but the way that the game works now, like, just because you hit someone with the ground when they're on top of you or you dash away from them, a lot of the times the characters will just have like a bunch more movement or some resource to just stop themselves from being able to be hit with by her afterwards. The bad part and the rough part are the following things. Her nade now, instead of getting a second charge at level 3, which was really powerful, it just lowers the cooldown by 2 seconds and increases the cremate burn rate of Wisp. And so, you know, that's nice, of course, but like not having a second charge is just like absolutely insane. That's like that's a murder. We're crying. Yeah. Scout Hawk, the increased vision radius by 50%. That's the new level 3. Vision radius by 50%, duration increased to 40 seconds. Like, this is really nice too, but the problem is it just no longer marks enemies. A change from the recent veteran test. That's really bad. Like that, ouch. Having these two things would make her like not viable. I don't think she still would be crazy, but they were giving her the ability to be forced. Now she's just IMO. And then they just nerfed her damage, so like they literally just skill reduction, projectile size increase on her ultimate, but then damage reduction, like that hurts too. And then the last set of changes are Zeph. They reduced the heal amount by 20%, which is good. Healing is kind of insane in this game right now, when, you know, there's no anti-heal countering it. But they now made it so the level 3 version is that you grant a short movement speed to the target that you hit, instead of getting a 4th charge. So that's also a nerf, but maybe a little bit of extra options. Maybe you could proc it onto like I don't know. It's just a little bit weird because you can't, or you don't really want to use it as like, I'm going to toss this on someone and give them like an extra engage, because then that's one of your healings. And the healings are just kind of too valuable. Though this could potentially give Zeph the ability himself to act like pretty aggro, just because he can pop it on himself. So maybe if he's taking damage, like maybe he can play more aggro, walk up, tank some damage, and he pops it on himself, and it's enough to just walk away from the enemy. Maybe that's how strong it is, but we'll see. Yep, this is something important to notice. Whenever you're casting you're like a chunker cannon, armor, repairing armor, cooking food, doing vaults, etc., you can just WSD to cancel it. That's nice, but it's important to know that things like chunker cannon or launching a chunker, or putting up a wall, putting up like the Fortnite soul, sorry, the fortress soul, wall will make it so you can cancel it, right? So you need to be cautious because it's really easy to cancel WASD, like if you're holding onto it or you're just, you know, naturally just fidgeting. So be aware of that, or you'll jump at someone, hit your chunker cannon or your chunker cannon, cancel it, and then get killed because you canceled it. That would be rough. Yep. Now you can walk into trees and be invisible if you have like forest walking or something. So that's cool. Yay. Yeah. And the rest here are just notable bug fixes. Abyss aim is gonna be better because it was off by 40 units depending on camera angle, so that's pretty substantial. That'll help. But the biggest things are like the biggest things here is Felix is now getting extra damage from his ultimate. So this was huge, and because I used to complain about this all the time. So shout out to Dunmere, LOL. Celeste would get stuck in her ult or her dash, and then you would have to glide to get out of it, or it would go all the way, and then that glide would oftentimes like either get you killed if you got spiked during it. So sometimes you would have to you would just have to like not dash or risk just getting crapped on sometimes. But now that's no longer the case, so that's really useful. Yep. And that is everything. So yeah, guys, make sure you toss in your comments into the comment section. Tell me what you think. Tell me which characters you are excited to see and play this next playtest. Yeah, and tell me if I'm wrong too. Yeah, just tell me if I'm wrong. I did do a tier list video for this test where I talk about some of this stuff, but then I also give my feedback on what I think is the meta for this playtest. So if you like that video, go and check it, subscribe to the channel, have fun. See you later, guys. Cool. Yay. Let's go.